Good evening. My name is Margaret Nelson, and welcome to Live United. This is a program put on by the Monadnock United Way to feature the United Way agencies and other agencies that are doing good work throughout the Monadnock region. So we want to focus on how to give, advocate, and volunteer in the Monadnock region. Today we are going to talk with Gary Barnes, who's the Executive Director of MAP's Counseling Services. And I'm going to let Gary talk about what you do, where you're located, and take it away, Gary.
Good evening, Margaret. Thank you very much. Well, MAP's Counseling Services has been around for actually 43 years now. We started back in 1973, and over the years we've grown to where we are today, which is, I think we are now the largest provider of outpatient mental health care in the Monadnock region.
Wow.
So we have two offices. We have our main office here in Keene, and we have a second office in Peterborough. And we've actually done a lot of our growth in the Peterborough area recently, where we have 5 therapists now working full-time. Altogether, we have 14 licensed therapists working at MAP's Counseling Services.
That's great. So what's the actual physical address in Keene and in Peterborough?
In Peterborough, we're at 9 Bills Farm Road. That is a building that used to be the old Brookstone building, and it's a wonderful building. It's modern, it's handicap accessible, right across the street from Conval High School. And here in Keene, we are at 19 Federal Street, which is located right above the St. James Thrift Shop, right next to St. James Episcopal Church.
Great, great. So you said you have 14 therapists?
We do.
Can you talk a little bit about what's the range? Why would somebody call MAP's Counseling Service? What kind of things would bring them to you?
You know, any kind of family problem or emotional problem or mental health problem or life problem that's suitable for being treated with outpatient mental health care would be appropriate for us. And with 14 therapists, we cover the full range of ages and a lot of different problems. So, I mean, it ranges. We have young children coming. We have families coming who are struggling with marital problems. We have seniors that come dealing with loss and grief. So it's just about anything you might imagine that you might need some help with.
Right. Wow. So you're a good place to start if there's some sort of mental health or emotional kind of issue going on with someone. Is that right?
You know, because we're such a large agency, we can typically find somebody who can be a resource to you. And sometimes we'll get calls for people that we don't have what they're looking for. For example, we do not provide medication at MAPS. We don't have a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner who can prescribe medication. Occasionally somebody will call looking for some help with that. We can't do that, but we have some ideas of where they can go, and we're glad to steer them in the direction of resources and that they might connect with. Similarly, one of the things that we don't provide is the kind of care that's best for people with serious and chronic mental illnesses, the kind that can often be disabling. There we partner with Monadnock Family Services. So if somebody were to call and say, this is, you know, I have a son or a daughter who has these problems and we're trying to find help for them, and I'll talk to them over the phone and learn a little bit more about what's going on. And if it's clear that they need something more than what we're going to provide, I'll give them the name and the phone number, the contact person over at, for example, Monadnock Family Services, and say, here's where you need to start. Because they can provide medication that can be critical for some people. They can provide case managers who actually can work with people in the home, in the community. So they have resources that we don't have. On the other hand, if what they need is a good therapist who can work with them, help them understand what's going on, help them find some solutions in life, then we'll set them up with an appointment, usually pretty quickly.
So one of the questions that comes up many times is, how can we pay for therapy?
Sure.
That's a really scary, so how do people pay for therapy?
Well, you know, we'll see this year, we'll see over 1,000 people.
Wow.
And the great majority of our clients will have their own insurance. Now, probably the single insurance that we take the most is Medicaid. So I think around 40% of our clients are Medicaid clients. But that still leaves about 30, 40% who have some kind of private insurance. Often things like Anthem Blue Cross or one of the other insurances. So we are providers for all of those insurance companies. There's a couple that we don't take for various reasons, but for the most part, we do take them. And that information, by the way, about which insurances we take and those that we don't take, is on our new website. So you can go to that.
And why don't you tell us what your website is and your phone numbers?
Yeah. Well, I'm very pleased to report that we received a grant a while back from the Putnam Foundation to improve our website. And I'm pleased to be able to report that work has actually been done.
Great.
And the new website is up and running, and I'd encourage people to go to that website at www.mapsnh.org. It is a information-packed website. Anything you would want to know about what MAPS has to offer and about what MAPS stands for is on that website, and including a page on our the insurances we cover.
That's great. So what if they are not covered by Medicaid and they're not covered by another insurance company? What then?
Well, we have some people show up who have no insurance. Now, interestingly, that's a dropping number because with the Affordable Care Act, people are finally able to get insurance who just a few years ago would have been unable to find any insurance. Yeah. So that's good news. Mm-hmm. We believe strongly that everybody should have insurance and everybody should have access to medical care. The problem with it, though, is that because there's not a lot of competition in New Hampshire for the Affordable Care Act plans, the plans that people are purchasing are often still very limited in terms of having very large deductibles to be met. So we're still getting people coming in saying, I have insurance, and if I have a serious problem, I'll be covered, but I have a $4,000 deductible. And for many working class families, that's just too much money to be able to spend for something that isn't life-threatening. And so people like that we consider underinsured, and we're able to provide services to them. And basically what we'll do is we'll bypass their insurance. They'll waive it, and they come in, and we're able to use the funding we get from the United Way to provide them services under what we call the Client Subsidy Fund. And I'm very pleased to say that the United Way has been really supportive of MAPS throughout the years. And the biggest way it supports us is through the money that it gives us for the Client Subsidy Fund. And the funding then allows us to reduce the fee down to the client to as low as $20 per session. Which for most people makes it very affordable. And then the additional cost of providing that services gets offset by the money we get from the United Way, and it allows us to continue to provide this. And we've had, in years past before the Affordable Care Act, we had as many as 25% of our clients were coming in without insurance. Now that number has dropped over time, and for good reasons. Now for some people, even the $20 a week has been a lot of money. And so the other thing that we've been able to do with the funding that we get through the United Way is we've been able to support our graduate training program. We work closely with Antioch University, New England, as a site where interns and practicum students from the master's levels programs and the doctoral program at Antioch are able to come and get clinical experience. Now these are students who are usually advanced students. They've been in the program for some time, sometimes years. They've had training elsewhere, because when you come to MAPS, it's a very high level of expectation and a lot of responsibility, more than many sites, for example. Those are people who can work with clients who have very little insurance or can't afford the $20. And an intern can see somebody even for free if necessary. And so we have people who are able to get counseling for well over a year if they want to, at very low cost.
That's wonderful. Now I would assume that if they're seeing an intern, they're being overseen by someone who has the credentials, etc.
Yeah, we provide extensive supervision of our students. It's required by the training program. It's also required ethically to make sure that the care being provided is good care. So frequently our students are actually audio taping their sessions. They do so with the permission of the client.
Yes.
And the tapes are kept as tightly locked up as Fort Knox.
Yes.
But they bring it in I'm one of the supervisors. We have a couple other people who are also supervisors. And they'll bring the tapes in, so the supervisor can actually be more or less in the room with the therapist, can listen to what's going on, can identify whether or not they're hearing things correctly, whether they're responding in a way that's helpful. that they've taken an approach that's going to be helpful.
So actually the client is getting the expertise of several people rather than just the one, which is an interesting benefit,
Right.
actually.
Right.
That's wonderful to be able to offer that because so many times at the River Center people come and they contact us about where can I go for therapy? I don't have any money.
Right.
And
That should not ever be a problem.
That is a wonderful
Yeah,
thing.
that should never be a problem.
That is a wonderful thing. So why don't we, let's see, what are some other things? Do you have some other things that you would like to talk about?
I got a lot of things I could talk.
I'm sure you do.
How many days do we have here?
Yes.
You know, let me say, the other thing that we do with funding from the United Way is it allows us to offer some free groups in the community. And we've done that. We have offered 3 groups for people with cancer for, I think it's going on over 20 years now, that those groups have been running, with people coming and leaving depending on their own personal needs. We have a group that meets at Cheshire Medical Center here in Keene, and another group that meets at Monadnock Community Hospital in Peterborough. Anyone who has a diagnosis of cancer or has had a diagnosis of cancer and is in recovery is eligible to join that. It's not specific to any kind of cancer. It's both men and women are free to join, and there's no fee for participating in those groups. And again, that's something made possible by the United Way through your generosity. It's a wonderful place because, as anyone who's dealt with cancer knows, it can be a devastating illness. In addition to the medical trauma that you have to go through for treatment, there's the emotional stress, there's the fear, what's going to happen to me, how's this going to change my life? It affects your social network, it affects your family. And people can feel extremely isolated, feel very alone with it. They feel like suddenly people care, but they don't understand.
Right.
There's a lot of spiritual questions that you begin to ask. So MAPS, with its understanding of the importance of spirituality in our lives, is able to bridge both worlds as both psychotherapists, but also as people who provide spiritual guidance as well. And it's a place where those two come together extremely well. And people will come and join the groups, and they'll stay for years. And as they get stronger and as they deal with their illness, they'll work with new people coming on board, people who are just starting out that journey and trying to figure out what does this mean. And you're working with people who may have had cancer for 5, 10 years, who understand that journey better and can work with you and help guide you and support you through that process. So it's a wonderful group. We have a third group that's offered for spouses. It's not meant just for spouses, it's for people who are support or caregivers of somebody with cancer.
Yes.
And that meets in our Keene office once a week. Again, reflecting on the fact that, and if you've ever had somebody in your family who's had cancer, I know I have, many people have, providing that care can be emotionally very difficult. You're dealing with your own fear, your own anxiety, but you're also trying to be strong, you're trying to be supportive, and it can be very, very stressful. So we offer a group in Keene that allows people to come together and have a safe place to talk about what they're going through, have a supportive place where they can give each other ideas in terms of here's what you can do to help someone, here's what you can do to take care of yourself, because you've got to be strong through all this. You're often, a lot of the responsibilities for the family fall on your shoulders.
Right.
You know, things that your wife or your husband used to do that for a while they may not be able to do. So it becomes your responsibility. Now you've got the kids at home, you've got the bills to pay, you've got the lawn to mow, all these things that you have to take on because your partner is going through chemotherapy or radiation treatment or what have you. So we have that support group. And a couple of years ago, we were able to expand and start a support group for people with chronic pain, often accompanied with depression. There are a lot of people who live day to day with severe chronic pain, and they're invisible in many ways because you can't see the pain. You see the person and they seem to be doing all right, but privately and secretly, they're hurting all the time. Often they rely on a lot of medication in order to just get out of bed in the morning to get along. It can be discouraging. Things that they wanted to do, things that we take for granted, they can't do. Mm-hmm. Climbing stairs can be difficult. Going out, especially in the cold, especially this winter, which has been so cold.
Yeah.
they just can't take anything for granted. So again, it's an illness that feels very isolating. It often is accompanied with depression, which can make everything worse. The pain makes the depression worse. The depression makes the pain worse. So we provide a support group for people with chronic pain. And again, they come together, they learn strategies for coping with pain, they discuss issues around how to treat their pain, and they provide support and guidance to each other. And again, at very low cost, sometimes free.
So if somebody in the community wanted to join one of these groups, they could just contact you either through your website
Yep.
or your phone numbers in either place. Do you want to give those numbers again, just in case somebody's just joined us?
Our main number is 355-2244. There's extensions for everything. My extension is 8104. But if you want to speak to our main receptionist, our office executive assistant, you can call Dawn at extension 8101. Our website, by the way, has a link for all of our services.
Wonderful.
So if you go to the website and click on services, you'll see on the menu a page for our cancer support program and also another page for our chronic pain groups.
Great.
And on those pages is a picture of the therapists who do those groups.
Nice.
And a link to their email and to their phone number. So
you could get more information.
You can call the therapist directly and say, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer and I'm looking for a support group. They'll tell you all about what they have to offer.
What if a family member really wants one of their family, they feel like they really need some therapy?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
I bet you get that a lot.
Yeah.
How does that work? It's not the individual's idea to go get therapy. They don't think they need it or they just don't want to be bothered with it. But those who are close to them really think it would be helpful. How can MAPS help them?
Well, that's tricky. We tend to encourage people to call us themselves. And so if somebody calls up and says, would you call my husband and tell him he needs therapy?
That doesn't work usually.
I understand the temptation to have us do that. It usually doesn't work. So to a certain level, people have got to have enough motivation to at least give us a call. Now, it's not unusual for people to start therapy with a lot of ambivalence. It's not a easy thing. It's an investment of time and money. It's also an emotionally difficult thing for some people because you're going back, you're talking about things that frankly aren't easy to talk about. And that's why they become emotional problems, because we tend to bury things. We tend not to look at things closely. And when we do that, like anything else in life, it can tend to get away from us. So our therapists are trained in doing motivational interviewing. It helps people look at why they're there, what it is they hope to accomplish, and to help move them in the direction of saying, yeah, this is important, now's the time to work on this. And it can be scary. And they need to know that the therapist understands that. The therapist is not going to be pushing them. The therapist is not going to be forcing them to do anything they're not comfortable with. The therapist is there as an ally. And they are experienced to know what speed works for you, what's the pace that's going to work for you, and what's the most appropriate way to help you find that solution. And there's many different ways to help people. There are many different types of therapy. Our therapists are skilled in a lot of different kinds. So that's their job, to help you find and make meaning of therapy in a way that feels right for you. That doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, but it shouldn't be overwhelming. It shouldn't make you feel like you're not in control.
So that's good. And I'm assuming that if, the difference between going to a therapist and going to see your doctor for your annual visit, you kind of have an idea what to expect when you go to see your doctor. You're going to get your temperature taken, you're going to be weighed, You're going to get your blood pressure. But when you go to the therapist, it's different for each individual because each individual has a different issue that they're dealing with.
Sure.
But it's good to know that you can go on your website, you can email a therapist, you could ask some questions before you come to your visit, I'm assuming, but it will be a gentle process.
It is a gentle process. We hope so. If you go to our website, in fact, all of our clinicians are listed on the website with a photograph of the clinician and a small bio describing who they work with and how they approach therapy. So you can actually get a feel for the person that you'd like to see before you even come in. Our hope someday, by the way, is to actually link that to videos so that you can actually hear your therapist speaking about what they do. But I need a few more years before we're going to have that in place.
Well, and a few more grants, no doubt.
Well,
yes.
no, I don't think so. I think we'll be able to do that. It's just a matter of getting it coordinated and getting my therapist to agree to go on camera, because they're not.
That's scary to them.
Yeah, it is scary to
They
them.
may need therapy about that.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, the process of starting therapy can be a challenge. But the difference it can make in people's lives to finally put something to bed, to heal some wounds that have been around a long time, or just to figure out how to deal with a situation in your life, can have lifelong rewards for you. And it's something which I know that people don't understand well. It's one of those things that people make jokes about, and there's a stigma associated with mental health that people are uncomfortable with. But therapy has changed. It's come a long way from back in the days of psychoanalysts and deep couches and this sort of thing. And it's much more pragmatic. It's much more directed towards what is your problem, how can we help you? And that's the first question we'll ask when you come in to see us, which is, tell us why you're here. What's going on? Why now? And what do you hope, if everything worked the way you'd want it to, what would be different? A lot of therapy is work that you do on your own between sessions with your therapist. And so some therapists will prescribe homework to you, things to work on. And then of course, the early sessions will get history. Tell us about you, tell us what your life has been like, tell us whether you've had these problems before, tell us about other problems. And one of the things we often look for is people's strengths, people's resources. How have you overcome problems in the past? And what does that teach us about how well you can deal with problems? And what are some of the skills you bring to this process? At MAPS, we also like to ask people about their spiritual heritage, because that's something that it sets MAPS apart, is our understanding that most people come in with some importance of spirituality in their own life, whether that's religious or non-religious. Nonetheless, most Americans identify themselves as spiritual. And we feel that therapy should include that aspect of their lives in what we do. So we'll ask people if they have any strong spiritual beliefs, and how do those beliefs play a role in dealing with problems? Because whatever solutions we help people come up with, they have to be consistent with their values. Mm-hmm. They have to be consistent with their culture, with their spiritual beliefs, with the family system that they're a part of. It has to work in their life. Or what we're doing is we're introducing changes that in fact create more problems, and that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Can you just give us some, for instances, that why somebody might call MAPS for therapy? That we tend to be fairly, we don't like to wear our heart on our sleeve.
Yep.
We tend to like being a little private about emotions, but there are things that just eat away at us and affect our day-to-day functioning. That what would be some for instances?
Oh, I mean, I can give you millions of. We often will have couples calling us up they've been married for either a time or a long time, and things are falling apart. They're not communicating. They're fighting. Or they've simply stopped talking to each other, and they're trying to figure out why this is happening and how they can reclaim their marriage. And so we do a fair amount of work with couples working on their marriage. And often what's interesting is when you're dealing with couples, what you find is that the problem, in many cases, isn't actually between the two of them, but it's actually in things that they brought to their marriage because of experiences that they've had earlier in life. Things that might have made intimacy difficult, or things that might have made trust difficult, or communication difficult. And what they often do is they'll get married in hopes that their partner will help them fix that, without knowing that it's even something to be fixed. And when that doesn't work, they get angry, they get resentful, and then they start taking it out on each other. And we see this working in both directions. Both parts of the couple are trying to do this. Therapy can help them realize that and look at what it is they're unconsciously expecting of each other, and what it is that is in fact triggering them and their stress, which they're covering up with anger. When you can break through that, then people realize that they're actually allies together and not enemies. And marriages can get much better. We have people calling us because they realize that their drinking is out of control, or their substance abuse is out of control. And so we have a program and a therapist who works with people with addictions. We have Young parents calling us saying that their daughter or their son has been recently diagnosed as having an autism spectrum disorder, which can be very scary. Because you start a family, you think your child is going to be perfect, and most kids have some kind of problems. They're looking for answers. How do we help this child grow? How do we help her socialize? How do we help her develop her language skills? We have a number of therapists who are experienced in working with kids on the spectrum.
So they're working with the children, and perhaps they may also be working with the parents to
Sure.
help them
Sure.
deal with that.
Yeah.
How about folks that are looking for work, and do you ever see people that are just so depressed from the job search?
Oh,
or-
absolutely. And during this economic crisis, it got much worse. And it makes sense. People suddenly can't support their families. Their self-esteem is being hurt. Their security is being hurt. And everything begins to feel like it's falling apart. That's the kind of climate where depression and anxiety can thrive.
Yes,
And of course, then once you get depressed, you begin to feel more hopeless. And all of your skills and resources that help you to deal with these problems begin to get impaired. And so you basically you get into a hole, and you just dig it deeper and deeper.
Well, I know that we have our Employment Resource Center at the River Center, and we have seen folks that it becomes very clear that they really can't look for work at this point until they do some therapy, because they have gotten to that point where they can't lift their chin up anymore, and they really need to do some work in that area. I'm assuming you also probably work with parents who are really having a hard time relating with their children, but be it as classic issues with teens, or just
yeah.
children with
Yeah.
special needs, many different things that are adding stressors to the family.
Oh, we see our fair share of teenagers who are sort of dragged in by the parents because something happened at school, and they're worried their son won't graduate, or they've been suspended or in trouble. And again, that's where motivational interviewing is at its peak, because a reluctant teenager being brought into therapy is a hard client to work with. They don't see they have a problem. They think mom and dad is the problem. If they would just leave me be, I wouldn't have a problem. So helping a child see that there's things that they can benefit from, and that this is a win-win kind of situation, is part of the art of being a good therapist. Sometimes it requires working with the parents. But sure, we'll work with teenagers, sometimes around substance abuse issues, sometimes behavioral issues. We deal with a lot of trauma. We see a lot of people coming who have experienced significant trauma in their lives, either as sexual abuse as children, domestic violence, and many other sources of trauma. And so most of our therapists are very sensitive to issues related to trauma, have a lot of resources to help people heal from trauma, get back on their feet, get back into life.
Wow. So you said that you're going to expect to work with 1,000 individuals this year.
Yeah,
and
growing. Every year that's been going up.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have a resource that no matter what your income is, you're there for people in the region.
Right.
What are some other things that you'd like people to know about?
Well, I'd
this?
like to, one of the things we're about to start, it's an initiative that actually the United Way has helped motivate with us, because one of the things the United Way has called for is that they want to show that the resources they're providing are actually making a difference, in not just for the agency, which we can attest that it makes a good difference for the agency, but you want to make sure that it's making a difference in the lives of the people that are actually being served by these resources. And that's a challenge. Because especially for mental health, because so much of what we do is done in confidence, and we don't say to people, you've got to get better. United Way gave us some money to help you, so you've got to cheer up and feel better, because that's not ethical. That's not appropriate to do to people. People have a right to work at their own speed and get better at the best rate they can. But it does make sense to be able to say, Are we in fact making a difference? Are people getting better? So one of the things that process has initiated for us is the movement towards some outcome measures with our clients. And we are looking to implement a system that we're calling the ACORN system. Actually, it's called the ACORN system. It's used nationally by some very large mental health agencies and by therapists all over the country. And it's a simple questionnaire that clients fill out before the beginning of every session that simply asks, how are you doing? And it also asks, how do you feel your therapy is going? And we take that data, we put it into a computer, and we analyze the data, and you're able to track over time how people are doing. And what it'll allow us to do is it'll allow us to go back to the United Way and to insurance companies and say, look, here's what we're showing. People are actually starting off here, and over the course of time are ending up in a much better place.
Nice.
And it also guides the therapist, because with clients who are struggling, they'll be able to see evidence of that very quickly and be able to sit down and say, let's talk about what's going on here and what might we do to make this work better for you. So it allows me as a supervisor to know that my students are doing what they're supposed to be doing and keep track of how they're doing. All around it helps us be more accountable, it helps us improve the quality of services. And most importantly, that clients who have been treated by therapists who are part of this system report that they feel like their therapy is better. They feel like their therapist understands them better. They feel like it's just another way to communicate to their therapist what's going on with them, because there's only a limited time. You know, you see them an hour a week, there's a lot going on. They want to tell you about what's happened in their life, how they're feeling. There's not a lot of time to do a checklist of things that you want to do. This shortcuts that and allows the therapist to have a checklist of information that they start every session with. So we're hoping it'll improve the quality of service. We certainly think it'll make the United Way happy that they're funding something that is making a difference, and we can prove that.
Sure, that's great. That's a great thing for you to be doing. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they can call your number. You want to give it again?
It's 355-2244, extension 8101.
Great. Or go to your website,
Go to our new website,
mapsnh.org.
nh.org. And if we have time, I'd like to talk about our fundraiser.
I think you should tell that.
All right. How are we doing with time?
We're doing good.
We're doing all right?
Yeah.
So I'm, as people may know, MAPS is a nonprofit agency. And we have, like most nonprofits, struggled over the years to stay viable and to pay our bills. We have had a long dream of finding other ways of developing revenue for MAPS so that we can buy furniture, and actually our biggest dream right now is to expand our our facility so that we can provide more services. We've outgrown our current facility, and so we're looking at renovations and additional costs there. So what we've been able to do is, for the first time, we have been able to get together with the Colonial Theater and host a major fundraising concert. So I hope people have seen the posters around town, seen the ads that have been running. But on April 11th, 8 o'clock at night at the Colonial, we are hosting the first Keene a cappella college student concert.
Wonderful.
And we're very excited by that. We think
Wonderful.
we think it's going to be a wonderful event. And we have 5 college teams coming to perform. And I have a list.
Nice, yes. Who's coming?
So, of course, we're going to have Keene State College.
Yes.
So, and their group is called the Chock Full of Notes.
Nice.
We also have the Dartmouth Airs coming, and they're a nationally recognized group. They're one of the top countries in the team. They've been on television and movies, and the Dartmouth Airs will be there. A group called Pitch Slapped from the Berklee School of Music will be there.
Wow.
The Beelzebubs from Tufts University will be singing. And finally, a group called Zumbis from Amherst College will be singing. And I don't know if everybody knows what a cappella music is, but it's like a choir group where they sing songs, but they don't have a band, they don't have any instruments. The singers also do the instruments. And so they'll do a drum beat in the background. They'll do sounds of instruments along with, and of course they harmonize and they put new twists on familiar songs. And it should be a wonderful night. It should be very entertaining. And most importantly, is the money we're going to raise will help support MAP's counseling services continue to function, continue to meet the needs of the community, and continue to hopefully do another 42 years.
That's wonderful, because we know as a nonprofit, you are providing services to anyone who needs them,
That's right.
regardless of income. And the only way that you can do that is by being supported by our community and through the United Way. So we're thrilled that you're doing that. That sounds really fun. That is April 11th
That's
at
it.
the Colonial Theater.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Tickets are on sale now.
I bet you could sell me one if you wanted.
We'll talk as soon as the show
you'd
is
be
over.
happy to do that. So I think this wraps it up. We're really glad to be talking with you and finding out more about MAP's counseling services. Really thrilled that that is available to this area, and it's such a top-notch program. With 14 therapists, you have the range to see folks that need to be seen, regardless of what their issues are. So thank you, and that wraps it up for the evening. Thank you for listening.